I thought this is a good subject to do. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm no expert on sumps by any means, but I do have a sump that I've been using for several years, so I do have a little bit of experience on them. So what I want to do in this video is I just want to capture the basics of a sump. How to get it set up, and some basic information that you need to know in order to be successful with a sump. Now granted, out there, sumps can get very elaborated, especially in the saltwater world. So let's talk about sumps real quick. So there's basically, a couple of different kinds of sumps. You can do a DIY sump, and I think Ben Ochart, if I remember correctly, he's done a couple of videos on the DIY sump, and that's basically where you just take an aquarium that you buy, a 20 gallon, 30 gallon, or 40 breeder, whatever, and you put dividers in there one way or another, and a return pump and overflow that flows into it. Pretty simple, and that's economical to do it that way. Or you could have a sump like I have. I have a sump that came with my custom aquarium, which is the seamless sump system. It's all pre-made, it's modular. Yeah, they're more expensive for sure. So you could go that route. It just depends on how you want to do it. First of all, let's talk about the components of the sump. So first of all, you have the sump, whether it's an aquarium or a pre-made sump type deal, whatever, something that holds water, that you can flow water in from the tank and water it back into the tank. Simple. Something that holds the water, which we all know, and you're going to have a return pump. You're going to have plumbing to plumb the return flow back into the tank. You're going to have some type of overflow. So there's different types of overflows that you can have for a tank with a sump. So you could have a drilled tank where you have drills in the back glass and you have overflows that flow the water down to the sump. That's what I have in this tank right here. My tank is drilled in the back. Or you could have a tank that's drilled in the bottom and you have these big overflows with standpipes up in the middle of them that flow water down. That's another way. Or you could have a non-drilled tank, and you can buy, I think they're made by Aesop and probably some other folks. It's just a hang-on back overflow, and once you get the flow going, it stays going. So there's many different ways to do the return. Depending on the type of sump, once again, you could have filter socks, which that's what I have, is filter socks. Or you could just have water run into it and then it goes through a bunch of sponges to catch the particulate matter. I kind of like the filter socks, in my opinion, because they kind of trap all the big stuff. So that's the basic setup, you got water coming in, and then you got water coming out. So what do you need to know about this? First of all, your overflows that are bringing the water down to the sump, you really need to know how much flow rate is that it can handle. My particular system can handle 2,400 gallons an hour flow rate. So, but what you really need to be concerned with is how much flow your overflows can take and how much your pump is pumping. Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want your pump to pump so much water back up into your tank that it sucks your sump dry. So that means you've got too much output going into the tank and not enough input into the sump. So you really have to, marry up those two. You got to know how much flow you've got. So with that said, recommending, pumps I am a fan, and maybe this is my prejudice, but I'm a fan of CJ pumps. I have two CJ 5.0 pumps in this thing, and they have been running 24/7 seamlessly for years now that I've had this tank, and so I'm kind of partial to them. Now there's other pumps out there that are cheaper or whatever, but if you're looking for a quality pump, my opinion is get a CJ pump. And you know, they make different pump sizes. They make some that have electronic controls, which you can control, you know, electronically either on your phone or a little, you know, display thing that you can adjust the flow. So on the return side, so because I have a custom aquariums, you know, they call them the emitters. It's the water that puts the water back in the tank. So I have two of them. Well, mine have two little, I don't know what you call them, but they're like two little square boxes above where the water shoots out, and they're hollow. So what happens in the event of a power outage, when the water is going to drain back to your sump as soon as your pumps quit working, right? So once that water gets past those two little square deals, then it breaks the siphon and it stops your water from backflowing from your input, you know, your return lines. So if you don't have something like that, once again, Ben Ochart, you know, he has a good video on his stuff, so you can check him out too. But he has on the back of his aquarium, he has these one-way valves on his return line. So what happens is, excuse me, when the water's pumping, it opens a little flapper inside that valve, right? Lets the water flow. If the power shuts off and water starts backflowing through it, it closes the flapper and basically stops the siphoning from siphoning back into your tank. If you understand what can happen with those emitters or your water returns, like mine, I know you can't see it right now because the light's off, but mine, the top of the tank is here, but the water returns, they come down about 4 or 5 inches into the water. And if we had no way to stop that back siphon, you're going to put 4 or 5 inches of water from the top of that tank into the sump, and what's going to happen, you're going to overflow your sump. So it's very important to have some way to stop the backflow on your return lines. And let's talk about your overflows now. So no matter the kind of overflow that you use, I found, because this is my first and only sump that I found I had to do some tweaking to, number one, calm the noise down, because sumps are a bit noisy. You can make them pretty doggone quiet. As you can see, my tank is virtually silent, you know, with the sump. The only thing I really hear is I hear a little bit of humming from the motors, but most of the noise in my tank is I've got a fan that's standing over here, a tower fan that runs to circulate air in this room, because this room gets pretty warm with all the tanks that I have. So anyway, on the returns, so a mistake that I made, on the back side of my tank I have an overflow box and I have 3 return lines. So 2 of the return lines return straight to the sump, they go to filter socks. The third one is an emergency line. So inside the back of my overflows, I have 3 levels of piping. So I have a pipe here, a pipe here, and a pipe here. Well, the highest one is the emergency. So if something happens where I've got too much water in that overflow box, so it doesn't overflow out onto the floor, I have an emergency, and what it'll do, there's no valve or anything. It's a straight 1.5 inch pipe straight down to my sump, and it doesn't go through no filter sock or anything. It goes straight into the sump and just dumps the water in there to stop it from overflowing the overflow box. Now the other 2, I have ball valves on there. So they make different kinds, you know, you got PVC ball valves, you have PVC gate valves. I think the gate valves are better You can control the flow a little bit easier. They're not as sensitive as a ball valve. A ball valve, you know, you twist it and it kind of, you can't get a real smooth fine tuning as well as you can with a gate valve. So one of the mistakes I made, and I should have thought of this when I did it, but I put my ball valves directly underneath my overflow box. Well, once I first got this tank set up, no fish, just water, and I assembled all the plumbing and the pumps and everything, and so I've got to test it and make sure I don't have any leaks, right? So I did that, good to go. Slide the tank in place, fill it up, put fish in there, and then I'm noticing, man, this thing's noisy, really noisy, you know. And so I start doing research, and okay, I got to tune this thing. So I'm start turning these ball valves. Well, the problem is, dummy me, I should have put the ball valves down underneath here where I can get to them anytime easily. Right now, they're right behind the back of that tank, and the only way to get there is to climb up on top of that tank and hang my head over and my arms way down in there to get to them. And that is a royal pain in my butt. But now that I've got everything set and tuned right, it's no problem. But doing that, getting there was a royal pain in my butt. So just food for thought. Your valves that you're going to put on your overflows, put them where you can get to them easily. That's all I'm saying. And you know, they have these quick disconnects, or they're not really, I don't know what they call them, but you can take two pieces of pipe and it has a disconnect with O-rings in it, and so you can disassemble it easily without having like PVC glue pipe solid all the way. So that's another nice item to have. But once you've got all that stuff done and you've got a thing, the biggest thing you got to do is test your sump before you do any fish or anything like that. You get your tank set up, you get your plumbing done, you get your pump in place, you got your returns. However you're going to do the returns, whether you're doing filter socks or sponges or however you're filtering your sump, you know, get that all set up and then test it. And what do I mean by testing it? Take your system, fill it all the way up, get your sump to a level that you think is safe, you know, and when you're testing it, you're going to figure out what's going to be safe and what's not going to be safe. So what you want to do, once you got your sump filled and you got your tank filled, and you got your pumps running, and you're watching your sump level and making sure it's not sucking it dry, because if it is, that means you got too much pump and not enough outflow. So you may have to tone your pump down. Or just the opposite, you don't have a big enough pump and your sump just keeps filling up and it's not pumping enough water out. So you know you need a stronger pump. But once you get it where you think it's pretty good and things seem to be stable, kill the power on everything. Just kill it. Once you kill the power, now watch your sump. So once you've killed that power, and you're going to watch your sump, it's going to rise because your water is going to flow back to the sump because there's nothing pumping it. So it's going to come through your overflows. So what you want to watch for is how high is it going to come into that sump. You don't want it to overflow your sump. So you want to find a medium where you can safely run this water level at this level, and if the power comes off, say it comes up 2 inches, but you still got 1 inch or more of aquarium or some, you know, whatever, so it doesn't overflow it. That's what you want to test for. So, and you also want to test for leaks, you know, make sure nothing that you put together is leaking, because you don't want to put your tank all up there and then find out you got a leak either. So that is the basics of a sump. So I'm going to take my camera and we're going to try to it's going to be difficult because, like I say, the sump's all up underneath the stand and everything, and I'll try to capture everything of my sump so you can understand it a little better. Hopefully this gives somebody some basic help on, you know, how to get a sump set up and some basic parts that you really need to consider when assembling a sump, All right, folks, so this is the top of my overflow box, and I'm going to try to get down here. So that tube right there that you see, that is my emergency overflow. So you see, if the water overflows that tube, it will stop it from flooding over. And then here is my 2 stands for my overflows that go down to my sump that feed the filter socks. And I put these PVC pipes on here like that to silence it, because if you have a straight pipe like this, you're going to get a gurgling noise. So by setting these up like that, these have virtually silenced my overflow, which is what you want. You want the quietest flow ever. And then, it's just a cover that sits on top as soon as I get it there, and that's it. So let's take a look at the back side of my aquarium the best we can, and we'll see how we can do from there. All right, folks, so this is not the easiest way to film, but so you can see, this is the overflow box right here, and I know it's not good filming, but those are quick disconnects, those big white ball chunks right there. And as you can see, the blue handle, those are the ball valves that I mentioned earlier. And so, as you can see, they're not easy to get to, because I don't have but maybe 8-10 inches between the wall and the back of this tank. And then you can see the hoses that run down. And then this little small hose right here, this is one of my return lines. It's a 3/4 inch return line. There's 2 of them, one here and one on the other side of the tank. And that's pretty much the back side of it. So let's talk about the sump and let's go inside the tank. Let's see what we can see there first. So here is inside the tank. So I'm going to zoom in. So that is one of 2 overflows that this tank has. There's one there, and then there's another one over there, and that's the overflows that flow down to the sump. And then I have 2 what they call emitters, and this is where the water is pumped back into the tank. And as you can see, let me try to hold this steady enough, but it's kind of hard. On those emitters, you see those 2 little square parts? So when the power fails and the water drops down below them, it breaks the siphon, so I don't have a back siphon. So in my case, I don't need any one-way check valves on my return lines just because of these. So that's pretty much, what's inside. And there's 2 of these, one on each side of the tank. So let's look at the sump itself. So I know it's difficult to see, but this is underneath the tank. This is the first tub, and you can see there's one return hose, or not return hose, but overflow hose that's feeding it. There's actually 2 there. I don't know if we can see the second one because it's really dark up underneath there, but there's 2 of them. And then this is the first tub, this big, tall, skinny one, and this houses 2 filter socks. And then the water flows through those socks, and then you can see this square piece here. The water overflows from that tub into this tub, and then it goes down into this tub, which is full of biomedia. There's 5 trays of biomedia that comes, with the seamless sump, and it flows down, and then you can see it comes over and then back up, and then it overflows into the pump chamber. So let's take a look at the pump chamber. So this is the pump chamber, and this is where my return pumps are. And this is one of the key things that you want to know about. Remember, I was telling you about how much water to keep safely in your sump in case of power failure. So you see over here, I have marked on my sump, max. Okay? That means I don't want no water higher than that at any given time, because if a power fails, I run the risk of overflowing this sump. And then after been testing and, you know, my sump, you can see I've got my normal range is what I call it. So as long as I have water, you know, below the max, but in between those two lines, I'm good. If it goes down below that bottom line, I don't like it because you're running a risk of running a pump dry. Because that's a safety net right there. You know, it's not going to run the pump dry at that level, but it's just warning me, hey, you need to add water to this thing. So let's take a look. Remember, I recommended the CJ pumps. So, and I'll show you. So there's my two CJ pumps running in there. And those are 5.0s, and they handle this sump just perfectly. So that's a good thing. And there's also a little mini, like a power head pump that I use. And as you can see over here, this little black hose here, all it's doing is taking water from here and dumping in here. Very slow water, just to keep a flow moving. And I also have a sponge filter in there, along with a bunch of extra biomedia. So if I need to start up another tank, I got biomedia to do that with. Let me put this lid back on here. So this tub here is basically an evaporation tub. So instead of having to dump water in the top of my tank when my sump gets low, I just dump water in here, and your tank will always stay full. You'll never see it go down below the rim, you know. So that's what's nice about this sump. You add water. As the water evaporates, the sump just gets lower, and it keeps the tank completely full all the time. So when I notice my water gets low, I just add it right here to the sump into the evaporation chamber, and you're good. This was my first sump, and I was really nervous about setting one up, but now that I have it set up and it's working fine, I'm pretty comfortable with setting up a sump. All right, so everybody, I hope this video will help folks. You know, if you're nervous about setting up a sump, you're a little scared, trust me. I think everybody that's had their first sump has gone through that nervous twitch, I guess you want to call it. But anyway, this is just a very basic, excuse me, instructions, I guess, or thoughts on a sump system. Don't be nervous about it. If you do your research and you do your testing, like I mentioned in the video, you know, once you get your sump set up, test it before you know, get your tank completely set up to make sure it's good. And just some helpful tips, you know, were mistakes that I made, you know, by putting ball valves in the very back of my tank instead of underneath where the hoses were, where I could get to them anytime I want to make adjustments. Yeah, that was a mistake that I made. So, you know, learn from my mistakes, and I hope that this helps you on your journey. If you're gonna do a sump, don't be scared. Sumps are great. I mean, you can do a lot with a sump, and this video is just very basic. It's not, you know, in detail of everything that you need to do, but it's enough to get you started. And like I say, you do your research. There's a lot of videos out there by a lot of good fish tubers, DIY sumps to more elaborate sumps, you know, for, you know, that you go buy a whole complete sump system like mine came with my tank, or do the DIY side. Either way, you know, it's definitely worth your while. So anyway, folks, I hope this little video helps someone. And understand, I'm no expert on them, but it's just from my little bit of experience that I've had with them. And I think if I can do it, anybody can do it, because, you know, I ain't the smartest brick in the pile here. So All right, folks, so I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment on the video. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.